everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk about Odyssey, the brand new game mode that we got released just a couple of days ago, and generally my first impressions of both the, obviously the game mode itself, but also the brand new event as well that we have going on. Because there is something I really want to highlight about this event, and that's the fact that it was a complete surprise. Nobody saw this coming. No one expected to have this event or any of these skins come out. It all came completely out of left field, and I think that it's really cool that Riot have found a way to go back to having these sort of surprise releases that they tested with BMO earlier this year, and now that we have a full event just dropping out of nowhere. I really, really like that, because one of the things for me about games in particular is that it's really nice to have lots of surprises and to have things that you maybe didn't expect to see or didn't know was going to come, and what ended up being really, really cool because you kind of had that surprise factor right as the thing launched. And that's a lot of fun. That's really cool. But with League of Legends sort of development and the way things have gone, you ended up with a scenario where, because everything has to hit the PBE and then takes another 2 weeks before it eventually comes live, you don't have any of the surprise because of sites like Surrender at 20 and just people in general who cover that kind of thing, because unfortunately you have to have it available for testing. So obviously some people are playing it because they're testing it, they know what's going on, so they tell their friends, they make websites dedicated to explaining everything that's going on with these new game modes or the new champions or any of this stuff, and unfortunately it leads to a situation where it doesn't feel that great because you can't really surprise anybody. You can't have these kinds of events come out because they all have to test. Well, with Riot's ability to surprise deploy now, we can still have these kinds of surprises, and I think this is going to be really cool. And I'm really excited about this because it does mean that we will get these kind of events cropping up out of nowhere, and they're going to be a lot of fun in the same vein as this. I think that Odyssey would have been not necessarily disappointing, but not nearly as good and not nearly as fun for a lot of players if we'd have known about it in advance, because there would have been a lot more people complaining about this skin is lacking a texture here, or the particle effects on this skin are underwhelming, or why this champion gets a skin. Instead, because it all pretty much hit live at the exact same time, no testing at all, there wasn't time for anyone to kind of give that kind of feedback. Instead, everyone just got a chance to be excited about the thing for a change, which I think is really, really cool. The other thing I really do like about this whole event and the sort of release with it is that because everyone didn't have an opportunity to play this game before it hit live, it ended up with a scenario where the game wasn't solved by the time it came out. Obviously, Star Guardian Invasion was on PBE. People had a lot of time to play it out, test it out, and then be able to say, oh, you know, when it finally comes to live, here are the kind of strategies you want to use. Instead, you don't have that because it came to live all at the same time. Everyone got to play Odyssey all at the same time, so there wasn't that opportunity to kind of say, well, here are the kind of strategies you want. Everyone got to jump into it right on day one, and I really, really like that. I'm glad we have these sort of surprising events that can finally come out again. Anyways, going on to talk about the game mode itself. First of all, I do really like it. I was a huge fan of Star Guardian Invasion when that first came out, and while I'm not as big of a fan of Odyssey as I was of Invasion, I do really like Odyssey. I think that Riot have definitely stepped up their PvE game. I think that it has a lot of really interesting scenarios and mechanics going on with the Aura Collection and trying to kill lots of monsters all at the same time. And definitely more of a variety of enemies. I am a big fan of that. Star Guardian Invasion felt very samey after a while because you pretty much knew everyone what you were going to see. And in this game mode, you really don't have that because everyone's going to be very different and interesting, and you have to have different tactics and strategies for dealing with them. So I really do like that. And the other thing that I think this has a step up on against Star Guardian Invasion is that it's challenging at all difficulty levels. Star Guardian Invasion felt like, on especially lower difficulties, you could pretty much win it with your eyes closed. As long as your team comp wasn't full damage, if you had even one person who could heal or apply Ardent Sensor back in the day, you're pretty much good to go. You didn't have to worry about almost anything. And in fact, with the ability to just stand on someone's corpse to revive them, it made it even easier because you just kind of clustered around each other, and then if you die, someone will bring you back before too long. So that's kind of one of the things that I really do like about this game mode, is that there's a lot more tactics behind it. Because you have a cooldown on Resuscitate, that's a lot more about who can bring the person up. You want to make sure you don't lose your cooldown, so multiple people don't want to be reviving at the same time. And if you're in a situation where you can't revive or have no revives left, then it gets really tricky for a few seconds. Obviously, you still have the option of just waiting out the death timer, but you want your team going as much as you possibly can. So I thought that that was an interesting way to do it. I thought that that was a good way to kind of balance things out from Star Guardian Invasion. And the other thing I really like about just Odyssey, the Odyssey skins in general, but is the whole Borderlands, Guardians of the Galaxy aesthetic. I think is really, really cool. I really do enjoy it, and having the sort of ragtag band of misfits that was sort of popularized in Guardians of the Galaxy and Borderlands and that sort of thing. I like that League now has an equivalent for it. I think that's really, really cool. And I do quite appreciate it. So I think that was a good way to go for this game mode. Now, to talk about feedback specifically, because unfortunately Odyssey isn't perfect for me at least. First, I do like the fact that there is multi-champ selection, that you can have 3 Yasuos or 5 Malphites or whatever combination of the heroes that you want. I think that's really, really cool. But I do think that it means that solo queuing, especially on higher difficulties, gets really, really hard because nobody wants to heal, nobody wants to play tanks, everyone just kind of wants to spam the damage characters, which then leads to situations where you have 4 Yasuos and a Malphite and nobody to heal. And in this game mode in particular, I feel like you really do need healing because of how much grindier it is over Star Guardian Invasion, but that's neither here nor there. It does lead to situations where, because anyone can lock whatever they want, you just kind of pick your character and say, whatever the team will fill, but then the team picks whatever characters they want and nobody fills, and you end up with team compositions that are very, very, let's say, not built for higher difficulty levels. So it does feel like Onslaught and even Captain in some situations feel like you have to have a full team in a voice comms if you want to be able to beat it, because solo queuing, you're never going to get the team composition you need in order to find success. So that's just one thing I'm kind of disappointed at. Obviously, this way it makes it way easier to finish missions because you can actually have, oh, I have a mission with Malphite. I just pick Malphite. Whatever, we have 5 Malphites? Fine, we'll make it work. So it's not that big of a deal if you don't get the champion you want, because you're guaranteed to get it. But I do think that it makes solo queuing a bit harder than it should be. The other thing is that enemy types in this game feel very, very samey to me. There are and obviously it's sort of the limitations of what Riot is doing. They're trying to find as many enemies as possible, so there are a lot of sort of reused assets and reused rigs. So there are only so many of those to go around. Obviously, the red brambleback, you only have so many of those, and there's a lot of sort of things along those lines. So I get it, but there are a lot of enemies where it doesn't feel like they do anything particularly interesting or new. It took actually quite a few playthroughs before I really started getting sort of the nuances of some of the enemy types. For the most part, it felt like a lot of them were sort of the same and sort of behaved the same, and you didn't really have to worry about the small differences between the two because they were almost identical to each other. So that's one of the things that I was sort of disappointed with, but I don't think it's necessarily a deal breaker. It just would have been nicer, especially because of how many enemies and how grindy fights can be, with all enemies having like 3,000 HP at the bare minimum. I think it's one of those things where I would love to have had possibly slightly fewer enemies, because if you're going to have this many enemies but they're all very samey, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I would have much rather preferred to have had fewer enemies, but all of them have very distinct niches, and I think that would have made it potentially more interesting. But that being said, I think that the game mode still does a lot of things well. I think it does end up in scenarios where you need to have good team cohesion. I think the augment system was a huge boon for the event because it first of all, it lets you kind of do some Earth mode things, like the Malphite augment that just carries enemies with you until you hit a wall. That's been a tremendous amount of fun to play with. I really do appreciate that. But it does let you kind of customize your characters as to how you want to play them, how you like to play them, have different strengths and different weaknesses. And I also think that in this game mode, sure, you don't have to pick all of the heroes if you don't want to, but I do think to a certain extent that you want to have, if you can help it, you want to have each of the individual champions. You want to be running a Ziggs, a Jinx, a Yasuo, a Malphite, because they all have different strengths and weaknesses, and they're all different kind of areas in which they're useful. In particular, Ziggs, on first blush, doesn't feel like he's very good at all because he doesn't have damage over time. It makes it really hard to burn through the large health bars of the enemies in this game mode. But at the same time, if you have cyst pods spawn, well, Ziggs is the best in business at dealing with those and dealing with the sites they spawn, because he's the only one with AoE damage. Yasuo is hard pressed to deal with it. Malphite doesn't have that much damage, so you really are relying on a Ziggs. So I think that that's a really cool part of the game mode, that you kind of do want to have one of everybody, but you don't necessarily have to. You can get through it with sort of unique team compositions. I do feel like having Sona in general is what you want to have for the game mode. If I have had a Sona on the team, I don't think I've lost, whereas if we haven't had a Sona, I think I've only won once or twice out of, probably about a half dozen tries. So that to me still tells me, obviously healing in these kind of MMO like scenarios, you're always still going to want to have it, but definitely it's not a requirement. You can win, it just makes it a lot harder to do. One of the other things I did want to also mention real quick is I'm kind of disappointed that there were only 5 characters. One of the advantages Star Guardian Invasion had is that there was such a big roster. There was a lot of different ways you could play the game. And unfortunately, that's not an option in Odyssey, but that's fine because you have the 5, and I'm sure this game mode or something like it will come back in the future if it's popular enough. So we will see. Anyways, those are just my initial thoughts on Odyssey. Go ahead and let me know what you guys are thinking of the game mode down in the comment section below. Would love to hear your thoughts, especially if you have any tactical advice or anything to help people get through Onslaught. Go ahead and let me know that in the comment section down below. I will be writing an article about sort of tactics and strategies in the coming future, so look forward to that. But also, if you want to see maybe your comments featured in that article, let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're looking for more Grab the Lantern content, you can check out my blog, link down in the description. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your enjoyment. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I will talk to you all later.